For all your medication and narcotic tracking needs, check out the LogRX app, created by career fire and EMS professionals. That's LogRX.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Flex 7 from TenCate Protective Fabrics. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of enforced technology. Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tencatefabrics.com/Flex 7.
There's some great technology out there for incident commanders. And you're just talking about tracking of firefighters on XYZ axis, biometrics, tracking all that stuff and all that stuff coming into the command post. Well, sometimes a lot of that's noise. As the incident commander, if I'm staring at a computer screen and I'm not staring at the house that's on fire, there's something wrong. Well, what AI is going to do for us is actually going to tell us what we need to know when we need to know it.
Fire Service Data and Tech Talk.
Hey everybody, it's Eddie Buchanan with the Fire Service Data and Tech Talk. Thanks for joining us again. We've got a great show today lined up for you. A couple of things, a few announcements. If you probably watched social media over the last few weeks, you've seen the FDIC announcements go out about who's been selected to teach in 2025. We're really excited. I'll be there for 2 classes doing operationalizing data in the fire service workshop, which is kind of like the entry door into data. If you don't know where to begin, you know that that's something you need to work on and you're not sure where to start, that's probably a good workshop for you to look for. If you're running Python scripts, you might want to go do something else. But as far as being able to, find your way through the data, how to begin, it's a good workshop, that good basic stuff. I'm also helping my buddy, Bobby Drake. John Buckman and I, we co-authored a book, The Training Officer's Handbook. Be sure to pick it up. But we're also doing a workshop creating and refining the Fire Academy, the role of the training officer. There'll be 2 workshops I'll be doing that Monday and Tuesday. So be sure to do that. Little Birdie told me that early registration is going to open on October 7th. So if you're smart and you want to go to FDIC, you'll be right there on October 7th to catch that registration when it opens, because that's how you get into the hot classes you want to get into. That's how you get the best lodging. All the good things happen very quickly with FDIC. So, go find out, see if you can get approval for it now. And that way you're good to go when that comes around. And if not, you can always find other ways to get there. You can start working the Airbnb chain and the whole thing to figure out how you can get to Indianapolis yourself. So October 7th, remember that date. The other big announcement I want to kind of focus on is the Technology Summit International, TSI we call it. That's going to be December 4th through the 6th in Oklahoma City, coming up in a few months. So that is an awesome event. I've been there since I think it's our 3rd year. It is an excellent opportunity to get with folks that work with technology and data. And they also typically have a fire dog meeting just before that. So that'd be December 3rd, which is an excellent group. That if you're interested in this type of content with Fire Service Data and Tech Talk, you probably want to be involved with Fire Dog also and see if you can get to TSI. So Fire Dog, if you just Google, it's a Fire Data Analyst Working Group. If you put that in there with the IFC, you'll find their homepage. Doesn't cost anything to be a part of that. When I checked it a little while ago, they had 368 members in that group. So it's growing pretty good. So it's another resource for you to kind of soundboard and really get some good information about working with data in the fire service. So those are the announcements for this month. So be sure to check all those things out. And this month, my guest, I was reading an article in Fire Engineering Magazine, and it was a technology and data article. So I love that. It was in the July issue, and the authors were Chief Scott Roseberry and Cy Narain. So you guys, welcome to the show. As soon as I saw that article, I was like, I know what we're doing next, right? So Chief Roseberry, why don't you just give us a quick introduction? Tell us about who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Hey, I'm Scott Roseberry. I'm a battalion chief with Garland Fire Department. It's a suburb of Dallas. We border the east side of Dallas. Next month will be 25 years I've been there. I've been a battalion chief for the past 10 years. And about 2019, I kind of fell into technology thanks to Chief Muncie. I think he just kind of drug me along and went headfirst into it. And so that's kind of how I got to where I am.
Well, welcome to the show. And we should mention you are now the co-chair of the Tech Council for the IFC, right?
Well, the chair, yeah, as of last week.
Okay, I can't.
Yeah.
So you're running that tech. What is explain it to the listeners what the Tech Council is, because I'm not sure everybody knows that it's there and what its mission is.
So it's the IFC Technology Council. It's been around for many years. It started many years ago, and it's a group of firefighters and IT specialists and vendors and civilians that all have an interest in technology in the fire service and helping drive the technology for the fire service instead of us being driven by the technology. So Technology Summit International came out of the Technology Council. So we created that back in 2022, I think was our first year. And so this will actually be our third year doing it. And like I said, in Oklahoma City, we recently also too broke it down into subgroups because technology is growing so fast. It's hard for all of us to keep track of it. So we've got subgroups and we've done some really great things with technology and we're looking forward to a great year of some more things. We have some things in mind that we're going to work on this year.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to that event. We might talk more about that in a second.
Okay.
Hey, Inside, you guys are a huge sponsor of that. Tell us a little bit about your background, who you are, and what you're doing with Microsoft.
Sure. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I think this is great. So my name is Narain. I lead our tech strategy for our public safety and justice customers here at Microsoft in California. Background, computer engineer by training. I think a couple of years in, someone said, "Hey, this guy can talk. Let's put him in front of a customer and let's have him explain tech to people." And then that led into a completely different career path. Stopped developing and went into more strategy. Went on to become a CTO for a couple of companies, and then about 4 years ago, had a great opportunity to come to Microsoft and work as a technology strategist with our state and local government customers, and more recently, more closely with public safety and justice, because, again, my background's been in public safety justice tech for about 20 years now. So it's been quite a fun ride. I love what I do primarily because I get a chance to talk to individuals like yourself, because how good is tech if it doesn't make a difference in people's lives and how people operate and change and think about technology. And so I get to see both sides of the world. I get to see the operational impact of technology, and I get to go back and dream up about what more we can do, so.
Awesome. What, since we're all three have been involved with TSI since it began, how would you describe it to somebody who's not been there? Because it is this kind of soup of technology. There's people there that have hardware, there's software, there's all these different flavors, and there's the practice of actually using data. How would you describe that to somebody, that big room with all this stuff in it? How would you describe it?
It's not the conference that you're used to going to. It's not an FDIC. It's not an FRI. It's more of a conversation between firefighters and vendors and IT people. It's just a conversation, and that's why we call it a summit. We're there to kind of have this conversation about what are our needs in the fire service and how can we better meet those needs as vendors like Microsoft and Deccan and other companies like that. And so you don't actually, I'll be honest with you, you don't have to know about technology to come and just be amazed by what's going on there. Like I said, one of our things is we like to put everybody in the same room. If we're growing a little bit, so we're kind of growing outside that big room, but we put vendors and the speakers and the attendees all in the same room, because that actually helps that conversation, and it helps everybody understand what's going on and what our needs are. We do have breakout sessions, and so we have more intimate breakout sessions where we'll have different panels and we'll have speakers on stage and we'll have a little short conversation, and then it's a big Q&A between the attendees and the panelists. We're going to have some this year. We're going to have some workshops So we're going to have if you're wanting to dig into a little bit more about GIS or a little bit more about AI, there'll be some workshops that you can attend, and we'll have, we're actually going to try to get some tablets or notebooks out there so you can actually kind of type away and bang away on that kind of stuff. And then there's, the social hours that we have in the evenings where we really kind of have those conversations and we start talking to each other and networking and talking to vendors and really getting down into here's what we need. And the vendors they're so receptive to this. The ones that come to this, they're very receptive. They're very open to hear about what we're saying as an industry and what we need. And so it's a really neat summit. And like I said, you don't have to know about technology to attend and really walk away with something from it, with something tangible from it.
Sai, what do you think? What's it like from the Microsoft perspective, an event like that?
Spot on. So I think my first exposure to a similar event was in California. A few years ago, I attended a California Fire Operations Summit here at the Ezra headquarters. It's where I think a lot of the ideas around a combined operations and technologists event came about, I feel. And it was sort of the anti-trade show or the anti-conference methodology, where it was a great opportunity, like Chief Roseberry said, an opportunity to have a dialogue, right? Usually technology companies and technologists build things and operations individuals use things. But although there is a pretty good, healthy amount of interaction in requirements and gathering, a lot of it happens sort of post product development or post technology development. I feel like TSI is one of those opportunities where we have an opportunity to have that dialogue, even pre-development in many cases, or it's a lot of the envisioning of the art of the possible conversations happen at TSI, where it's not about, hey, here's the tech and how is this going to work with your organization or department. It's about what do you want and how can tech be of service to you. I also really enjoy the fact that I've seen some startups at TSI lately, folks who are starting to build products, great creative ideas that, again, today's successful companies are yesterday's startups, right? And so today's startups are, who knows, going to be some amazing organizations in the future. So I feel like it's a great opportunity to interact and collaborate and really make meaningful impact from a technology perspective. And so I love TSI because it brings those two factions together. And traditionally, those two factions have had their own events or their own conferences. You've got the IT conferences and then you've got the operations conferences. So.
Right. I saw something at TSI happen. That's when the light bulb went on for me. It was last year, and there were companies there that do firefighter location, XYZ axis, right? Yeah. Really elaborate location capabilities. And then there was another company there that had some kind of headsets, some like VR headset types of things. And at first, me included, we were kind of looking at the headset thing a little side-eyed, like, I don't know. I can't see me wearing that on the fireground. It's like that might not be something that would be cool. But then watching these companies talk to each other, and then that's when the light bulb went on for me. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to wear that to, just to look at whatever, not just to see some data that's okay to have, but not great. I don't, not life or death stuff. But if I could have that firefighter location information placed on the building when I look at it. So now I'm not looking at a dot on a map. I'm looking at literally where they are in the building as they are in the building. Like if you could do something like that and throw some thermal imaging and some biometrics and really give me a solid operational kind of tactical data feed, yeah, I might wear the silly goggles then, right? You know what I mean? It's and watching those guys have those conversations. And so you're watching the product developers talk to product developers with a couple of firefighters standing there with a cocktail, right? You're getting real meaningful input into the future of technology in that setting. So that's when I went, aha! Now I see. This is why this is going to be so valuable.
And it's really great too, because like you're saying, like the vendors these technology companies are talking to each other, and some of them overlap and compete with each other in the marketplace. But at TSI, they're all friends. They're all collaborating together, and they're all. I mean, there's just this desire to help the fire service. And like you said, hey, I can do this with my product. You can do that with your product. Let's see what it can do together. And just the synergism that happens from that is amazing. And there was some other things going on there, like they were flying drones and they were using two different other companies' feeds, and it was throwing live images from inside there, and it was pretty amazing stuff going on.
Yeah,
I'm pretty excited about the drone technology because just the thermal imaging from a fire dynamic standpoint, you got to have that. I mean, that's a got to have thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think context is really what you're mentioning, right? So a lot of times, even product development companies build products for specific purposes. But the challenge is, where's the rest of the context around what else is happening around it? And so I feel like TSI and other events are the catalysts for those conversations to happen that bring additional context for these companies as they're developing product, because then they understand the overall workflow. Sure, you can only learn so much when you go on a ride along in a vehicle or go respond on an incident with a department, because you only get a very narrow subset of experiences. But the minute you start expanding that context into other areas, like you mentioned, those two companies talking to each other, all of a sudden it broadens the horizon of how you're developing a product. And so I feel like that's something that I feel super valuable about TSI.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Well, let's change gears and talk about this article, because that's what really caught my eye when I saw it online. Then I went back and looked at it in the magazine, and it's from the July issue, and you can find it at fireengineering.com also. The title was Copilot for the Fire Service, The Power of Artificial Intelligence. So let's start first at the beginning. What the heck is artificial intelligence?
I'll let Sai take that one.
Sure. Oh, wow. So AI, artificial intelligence, it's not new, right? This goes back to, I would say, the 50s. And some of you who probably have read a lot of the old books and literature around that, is Alan Turing was credited to this thing called the Turing test. A lot of that was around, hey, how can computers do things that humans could do, right? That kind of was sort of the genesis of artificial intelligence, the idea, a field of computer science, as you would call it, that seeks to create these intelligent machines that can either replicate or, in some cases, potentially exceed human capability or human intelligence. And from there, over the years, obviously, I would say from the 50s all the way till 90s, a lot of work was done in that space. I think 90s was machine learning came about in 1990s, late 90s. Machine learning was more around the subset of AI that essentially allows machines to learn from existing data sets and improve decision making, right? And then in the 2000s, deep learning became a thing. Deep learning was more focused on adding neural networks to the process, where you started using this data and this neural network machine learning techniques to now start looking at decision making. And I think the conversation has just completely changed in 2021, 22 with the advent of this generative AI, as you call it, the birth of tools like ChatGPT, which was, I call it the ChatGPT moment, because all of a sudden in 2 months, you had over 100 million people have access to this AI, where traditionally AI was more for these technical developers and geeks and others behind computers. All of a sudden, everybody had access to an AI technology on their phones or fingertips. And so AI is not new. It's been around. Probably a lot of us use AI in our day-to-day basis, and we just don't realize it or know it in many cases.
Yeah, the first time I noticed it was, I think it was 2 years ago in the instructor room at FDIC. Somebody brought in, they had their tablet or whatever, and was showing, kind of passing around, go, watch, I can make a slide presentation in 5 seconds. Watch this, and they were just throwing a topic in, and we were watching it build the slides, and we, had various opinions about what that meant, right? I'm not sure what to think about that. How do we know this information is good? Immediately we went to kind of deconstructing the implications of AI just right away without even understanding what it was at that point, probably. So what do you think, what are some of the main key points that a firefighter or fire chief should be kind of aware of, as you approach this? Like, do we just run out and AI is everything and we're just going to go both, like, we do in the fire service, man? We're going to take it and first we won't like it, and then we'll finally adopt it, and then we'll fly straight up our sector C with it, because we'll take it too far, and then we'll finally find some kind of middle ground. That's what I expect we'll probably do with it. So what are some of the pitfalls to look out for going out of the gate?
Yeah, right now, unfortunately, there is no roadmap to implementing AI in your department. That's one of the things that, as far as the Tech Council, that we want to work on this year is how do we help fire departments that want to implement AI, and what areas can you implement it in? And Sai can talk more about the ethics of AI, because one of the things we have to do is make sure we're protecting patient information or protecting firefighter information. At what point do you let AI make the decision on treatment protocol or, life and death decisions? So, we have to be careful with that. There's some simple things, though, you can do with AI right now. I go around Texas and give presentations to the Texas Fire Chiefs Academy. And I was just actually here in Dallas area doing a Quad Counties presentation yesterday and just showing just what they can do with ChatGPT right now. For one, just public service announcements. I take my phone. I've got ChatGPT 4.0 on my phone. You can talk to it. And I'll ask one of the fire chiefs in the room, so give me a subject you want a public service announcement on. The other day, it was crawling low in smoke. So I asked ChatGPT, hey, can you create a public service announcement for children about reminding them to crawl low in smoke? And it comes back within seconds and has this great public service announcement. And then I do another thing. I'll take it and I'll say, hey, that's great. We have a large Spanish-speaking population in my city. Can you translate that into Spanish? And it'll translate it into Spanish. That's just one thing you can do with it right now. Emails. I rarely send out an email that I don't run through ChatGPT. For one, I check it for grammar, check it for spelling, make it sound more professional, make it sound more friendly, make it sound, more caring about it. It really can produce some really good emails that make you look really smart. So, SOPs and directives. Right now, we're kind of going through our SOPs and directives. You can throw one of your SOPs and directives in there. You can ask it to make changes. You can take another department's and throw it in there and ask it to change the name and dates on it to your department. And it really helps if you put one of yours in there and say, follow this format. You can do with that. It can actually even do some data analytics for you. You can drop different file types like Excel spreadsheets in there. And you can ask it to analyze it, come up with a pie chart for, a graph chart, bar chart. Tell me how many days the fire engine was out of service, whatever, just stuff like that. So there's some simple ways you can implement it right now.
Yeah, and I think
definitely use it for the grammar thing.
For sure. What's interesting is I think, like I said, like machine learning and other forms of AI have been used over the years. I think where it got really interesting was generative AI, is because now AI is creating content, right? Now, all of a sudden, this conversation has shifted from AI being taking input and, helping with like predictive modeling or analytics and things like that, to now AI actually generating information for consumption. And so one of the things that I think you asked, like, hey, what should folks do? I think the key thing is to do some work around strategy and roadmap. So I would look at it as three pillars. For lack of a better way to explain it, I would say there needs to be strategy, there needs to be awareness, and then there needs to be execution, right? Strategy comes first, awareness in parallel, execution later. Because a lot of times what ends up happening is folks have access to technology and tools. They just go run after a technology or a tool to solve one problem, right? But very soon you realize that it doesn't fit into the overall holistic strategy. So one of the things I highly recommend organizations is come up with a strategy. It doesn't have to be an overarching, 100-page, 4-year strategy. It could just be something as simple as, where am I going to focus my AI innovation on? Who are my stakeholders? And what kind of governance and practices do I have in place around that framework? And so it could just be as simple as answering some 3 of those questions. Because to achieve Roseberry's point, there's a lot of things AI can do today. So you also don't want to wait to get started too long, and then you feel like you're already behind the learning curve, and now 6 months from now stuff is moving so fast, you're going to be even more behind the learning curve. But it is important to have awareness and understanding of that framework of responsibility, right? So at least we at Microsoft, we've got a responsible AI practice and responsible AI journey over the years. Ever since like 2016, 17, we formed a committee called an Aether committee that, essentially put some framework and guardrails around, is AI being used in an accountable account? What's the accountability look like? Is there transparency around it? Is it being used in a fair, reliable, safe manner? Is there like privacy and security built into it? Is it being inclusive? Things like that. And that whole responsible AI framework over the years has progressed into where we are today, where every product development organization has some of these frameworks in place as they're developing products with AI. So it is important that all three come in, play together: the strategy, the awareness, and the execution, with an overarching layer of governance around it.
Data governance. I was just thinking of John Morrison did a quick lightning talk. I think they called it at TSI or not FireDog the other day at FRI. I get my conferences confused. But he was talking about data governance, right? That it is important that you at least have some, I would call it like training wheels on your how you manage data, like what information is eligible, what is protected, what is, who has access to it. Some of those basics, I think, are an important kind of first step, particularly if you're just getting started in the data world, to have some kind of rules in place, and dictionaries. And Narain is helping with some of that, I think. We're getting some common data terms and things along those lines. But and then I think another conference, I go to a lot of conferences apparently, but I heard John Oates talking about what's in the box of particularly with government use of AI. It's important to be able to articulate, the public you need to be able to tell the public what is in the AI box. Is that a fair way to articulate that?
It's also a fair way to articulate, I would say, would be like, what sources is AI referencing and how's the output being presented to individuals who are accessing it, so that they understand that it needs to be used, again, in the context of how the information is presented and as an aid, as a co-pilot, if you will. Not that AI is going to solve all the world's problems and we're just going to sit there and wait for AI to solve it. It's really around how do we work with AI. I was listening to a CEO's interview recently, and they were talking about, AI-enabled individuals performing differently than individuals who are performing their job. So it's about it being AI-enabled or being AI-empowered, as I would say, and understanding how AI can help in that situation. And at the end of the day, it's still the human making some of those decisions and not relying on AI to make those decisions.
Very good. Yeah, I had an interesting conversation. I had a conversation with Copilot earlier this morning. So at my day job over at Deccan, we just went to this new algorithm. It's called discrete event simulation modeling, right? So let me put that in the AI thing and see what happens. Right? For 30 minutes, I sat there and talked to Copilot about, we're having this conversation. It's basically putting on a training class on what that exactly is and how it works and where does it fit in the whole analytics world. I was surprised how easy it was to work with.
Yeah. And I know, Chief Roseberry, you and I have talked, right? Like, I think previously it used to be about like knowing a lot of software skills to work with AI. And now it's become this thing about just understanding English and writing prompts. So it's become more of I'm almost going backwards. Like my mom used to say, better get your grammar right, better understand how you're saying things. And I feel like I'm going back in time where I'm starting to pay attention to how I'm asking questions. And AI is the one that's assisting me with responses. And to your point, Chief Buchanan, the thing I really like about Copilot in that scenario is it's not just giving you information, it's actually giving you the citations of where it's picking it up from. So you as an individual, when you're looking at it, you're not just clicking on stuff and absorbing it like you're doing a search on any search engine. you're actually validating where it's coming from. So you know the source, you're kind of able to use your judgment whether you want to rely on the source or not.
Yeah, I would say you need to go check those sources too, because AI is not perfect. It does have some hiccups. So I would definitely, if you're quoting the sources that it came up with, you need to go back and check those. And I think to John Oates' point, there's a level of transparency that we have to have in government. So you need to let the public know what's in the box so you can make sure you have that transparency.
So how do you see, looking downrange? A lot of the listeners on this particular show are firefighters. Mm-hmm. A lot of the feedback I get is from guys on treadmills that are listening to the show.
Yeah.
So how do you see AI affecting a firefighter? Like somebody riding a rig, whether it be up in the front seat or riding in the back seat. How do you see this coming into that, being used in their hands?
Well, there's several areas where it'll help them, but one would just be like in the data, getting good data. One of the things about data, it's an imperfect snapshot of the past that we hope predicts the future. And it's imperfect because sometimes it's how we're gathering that data, or who's gathering that data. So AI is going to help us gather better data, which will help us in the long run with our deployment models, our standards of cover. It help us justifications for new equipment or more firefighters. So, kind of in the background, it'll help that way. Depending upon the equipment they're using, which going to help. Well, you were talking about these kind of the heads-up displays that are coming online, helping with that and helping, with the incident commander being able to see that. And one of the things like Si and I were talking, and we talked about in the article, was there's some great technology out there for incident commanders. And you were just talking about tracking of firefighters on XYZ access, biometrics, tracking all that stuff and all that stuff coming into the command post. Well, sometimes a lot of that's noise. As the incident commander, mm-hmm. If I'm staring at a computer screen and I'm not staring at the house that's on fire, there's something wrong. Well, what AI is going to do for us is actually going to tell us what we need to know when we need to know it. So it's going to warn us when, a firefighter is about to be in trouble. Or detecting violent fire events about to occur in a house. So it's going to warn us about that. Firefighters tracking, I don't need to know where the firefighters are, the entire time they're in the building. But when something goes wrong, then I need to know. Biometrics, I don't need to know what their heart rate is the entire time. But if it goes above a certain parameter, then I need to know. And so AI is going to help with that in the background as well. UAS, drones. What they're working on now is completely autonomous drones. So you actually give the drones an objective and it flies itself. There's no need for a pilot with a remote, and in some cases you still need a spotter. There'll be no need for that. You just give it an objective, find the civilians on rooftops and bring them back. And it'll go do that autonomously. And that's going to take AI to do that kind of thing.
I think, separating information from the noise, like Chief Roseberry said, we get a lot of tech thrown at the fire service over the years, and there's more tech coming, right? And it's not the question of how many different applications. Look at us, in our work days on a day-to-day basis, we interact with so many different pieces of technology, notifications on our phones, and pretty much I run all my banking, everything I do on my phone, and just the cognitive overload in terms of the amount of information that's being presented to me on a day-to-day basis is massive. Now, imagine I'm responding to an incident. The last thing I want is to check 4 different tools, 10 different processes, 100 different notifications, and figure all that out. And so the more the tech gets thrown at people, the more the cognitive load. I think there is massive opportunity with AI to reduce that cognitive load and to bring more context, real-time context into the firefighter. And so if I was a firefighter on that treadmill listening to this podcast, I would say don't be afraid of AI, embrace it, learn about it, because chances are a piece of technology or a product that you're going to use in the next month, 2 or 3 or 6 is going to have some AI components built into it that's going to make your life better.
Kind of like Si is saying too, that just that cognitive load on the EMS side of things, and we're an ALS transport service as well, and most of the departments up here in the Metroplex are. When I first became a paramedic, my protocol was 60 pages, Now it's 200 pages. So, and it's just growing, and the services we're offering on the ambulance is growing too. We have ambulances in the Metroplex carrying blood banks on them. There's more equipment being added. So in the background, especially on the EMS side, AI is going to be sitting there in the background listening to what's going on, that conversation you're having with the patient. It's going to help you identify possibly what's wrong. It's going to help you identify treatment protocol you should go down, drug interactions, if they're already on certain medications and you're about to give them another one, is there going to be a side effect there? I think definitely on the EMS side, it's going to help with that cognitive overload and help us better treat the patients and get them the care they need and to the right hospital they need. Hazmat side, identifying chemicals, better plume models, evacuation distances based on the size of the container and what's there. So yeah, different applications in the fire service. It's definitely going to help us out.
The thing that struck me out of all that was cutting the noise. My buddy Nick we did a show a while back talking in Greensboro, talking about their pre-plan capabilities, and he made a great observation that the thing they were trying to do was present the information when you need it at in the right place in the right time, rather than having all this stuff. So like I always struggled. I guess I'm old school enough to where they were just trying to wrestle us to stay in the buggy as incident commanders when I retired. Like, there was this whole two schools of thought. You could be in the front yard with your radio and the clipboard, or you were sitting in the truck with a bunch of stuff and screens and doing all the things, right? And we would often debate what is the right way to do that. So I was always a little apprehensive to want to go sit in the truck because I feel like I was missing the tactile experience of this house fire, right? Like I want to be there and see it, hear it, and smell it, and feel the thing and understand what's going on. Somebody has to watch the building burn. I used to always fuss. But then there's all this tech, that's there. And outside of a few places, I don't know, do you guys have incident technicians, Scott? Do y'all have like the extra person in the command buggy?
So we have two battalion chiefs. We split it up into two north side and south side, and we have one right between the two of us. So
okay.
So on a working fire, both battalion chiefs come, so we'll have that, that fit there, that field incident technician.
Yeah,
we'll have that fit there on a working fire, and especially on the big ones too. So yeah, and that's a huge help.
That's where I see us going with AI. It's going to help knock that noise down. Yes. But I need to know what I need to know when I need to know it, and I don't necessarily know what I need to know. So it's helping sort out what's like. One of the things I was impressed with at some of the tech I saw at TSI was that these gizmos are listening to us talk, right? Like it's transcribing what it hears, and if you say the right keyword, it will take an action.
Mm-hmm.
So I was impressed with that. First, it's a little scary, but then again, you see the ads on your social media. You say something out loud, the next thing you know, you got 5 ads for it. But
yes,
but there's use in that, right? Like if something sudden happens, I can't get to my radio to get off a Mayday. I don't have to hit the radio. I can just say it. Right. That, there can be other cues.
Yeah. So that was actually kind of what sparked this article that Cy and I wrote. It was a conversation I was having with Cy, and it goes back to Don Abbott and Project Mayday. And he interviewed thousands of firefighters across the country and thousands of Maydays. And it's some great findings. Unfortunately, we lost Don Abbott a couple of years ago, and we lost a huge volume of information. His website is still out there. His PowerPoints are still on there, but without having him to explain it, we lost a lot of that, and it was pretty sad. But one of the things he identified was 16 terms that were common with Maydays. And I was asking Cy one day, I was like, hey, do you think AI will ever be able to listen to our radio communications and identify when 2 or 3, whatever threshold you set it as a department, identify, hey, 3 of those terms have been said, and notify the incident commander, you might want to start thinking about pulling these guys out. And Cy was like, absolutely. It will definitely be able to do that. And it probably could right now if a company went ahead and, started working on it. And that's when like, we started talking about, well, I was like, well, what about this? What about that? And so I was like, yeah, this is what it'll look like. That's what it'll look like. So, but that's where I have a lot of hope too, is just on the safety side of it. Like I said, giving the incident commander the information he needs to know, hey, the three of those terms are said. Your firefighters are on this floor back in the Alpha Bravo corner, and the heat rate, the heat flux is X point, whatever. And, the heart rates of your firefighters are this. And so you have all that information when you need to know it.
I would love to, I look forward to the day that we can get the technology to get integrated with like FSRI. Like to have some of the research start to really, it already kind of is, but like articulating heat flux, we got nothing on that in the field right now. I mean, we're guessing. We still debate with about the thermocouples in burn buildings. That was on the NFPA committee back in the day, and we actually took that out of the requirement. We took to some chagrin about removing the requirement for thermocouples in there because the scientists felt that it gave such a false understanding of the condition. Right? It's not about what the Fahrenheit is. It's more of a heat release rate that you need to understand, and we don't have the human bandwidth to calculate that in any kind of real time way. So hopefully AI maybe one day could get us to that point. With instrumentation in our turnout gear and. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I think you bring up something really interesting, and I think the importance of training, and what I mean by that is not just training individuals, the importance of training a lot of these AI models and running a ton of testing around it. With AI, the more you test, the better it is, and the better it potentially gets. Right. So while a lot of the scenarios we're talking about is, hey, like art of the possible, the art of the possible, or even the possible has to start with, let's start with a phase 0, and then let's test, iterate to get to a point where we're able to use some of these things in the field. Right. So I want to make sure that I emphasize that there is a journey to get there. It's not overnight. It's not tomorrow. Yes, the tech exists, but it's intentionally using the tech. And I, like I mentioned earlier, like where do you want to focus your innovation on, and going through that journey to get to that point where it now starts becoming usable. And we cannot skip that journey. It's going to take work to get there.
Yeah, I think
probably years of work.
Yeah, I think a great example of that too. And I think amazing tech that they're coming out with is on the Wildland urban interface. And, there's, especially in California, there's thousands of cameras set up all over the state of California. And you can view almost the entire state of California if you start clicking on cameras. What they're doing right now with the AI is they're teaching AI to watch these cameras and identify smoke. But you have to teach it what smoke is. You have to teach it, no, that's mist, that's fog. That's a cloud, and what is actually the wildfire smoke? Is that just a campfire? So it's having to go through that progression to learn that. But once it does, it's going to be amazing, because if you think about the manpower, how manpower intensive is that to watch thousands of cameras 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, when AI can do it from a laptop and I'll watch all those cameras. So I think that, on the Wildland urban interface, that's amazing. Of course, I mean, there's a lot of other areas that it's in the WUI interface that it's working, that it's going to be, really help us out and make our community safer.
And it's funny, that's just one dimension, right? And now you add other dimensions to it, like add sensors in the field, add other devices that are probably out there collecting information. And now you're giving it these AI models another dimension of data to work with. All of a sudden, your results or your accuracies or whatever you call it, they change drastically because you're adding more and more context. So, and I would say go back to sort of the premise of the conversation is data. You mentioned data along the way, like making sure, I think a lot of departments don't know what data they have access to and how good it is. Of course, Nearest is doing a phenomenal job with sort of like the data collection, the roadmap that they have around developing some of those standards and data collection. I know the Western's working on some more operational environments around starting to build out a public safety cloud of data where not just are you picking up like operational data sets from CAD and records and others, but you're also starting to now gather smart city data and other contextual data that is available around you to collect and synthesize and bring out information from those data sets. And so a lot of work is yet to be done on the data side. And I feel like as more data becomes usable, more clean data becomes available, and organizations know what data they have access to, a lot more capabilities can be achieved with AI.
All right, you got to go back and talk about what that was, that data cloud you just mentioned.
He's being a little
what?
Yeah, he's being a little modest, saying the Western Fire Chiefs, because it's Microsoft and the Western Fire Chiefs that are working on this. And it's pretty amazing stuff they're working on.
Yeah, we're working on a concept around building out a public safety data cloud. The idea being, traditionally different data sits in different systems, right? You've got CAD that sits in CAD, you've got records sits in records, you've got smart city data that sits in different, like for example, in this building, you've probably got HVAC and other systems, and they all sit in their silos, right? And how do you bring a lot of that data together in a real time fashion, so that as a first responder is entering that context, he or she has access to that entire context of data. And you're using potentially tools like AI and others to synthesize that data to bring operational intelligence. And so the effort that we're working with Western and some of these fire departments, and it's at the ground floor right now, a lot of work needs to be done, is around how do we bring that data together to create real-time intelligence in a more collaborative manner.
So that is kind of like this dream I kind of have going down. Like, I'm a big fan of data beyond the air brake, and starting to measure tactical benchmarks. And when you put that in the same pot with smart city data and all these other opportunities that are out there, I look at what like UL and NIST could do as far as fire modeling, right? Like they could go back and recreate a simulation of fire growth in a particular context. And if one day when we have the data to support it, I wonder, I don't see why we couldn't simulate firefighting operations in a defined context. So, could I not take a target hazard in my community and set it digitally ablaze, and watch what different tactics might play out in a different way? Is there, like, when I understand, like, beat per second firefighters travel under X condition versus Y condition? I've just started to hear the engineers mention some of those terms as they do their initial, we're just starting to get there. I'll be lucky to be alive maybe to see it, but at the speed of technology grows, maybe if I'm lucky and probably lose a little weight, maybe I'll be around to see it. What do you see, Sai? Like, you have that perspective to see what's possible. Like, where do you see it going?
Absolutely.
Where are we 10 years?
I think simulation is an area that's still untapped, but a lot of simulation depends on a lot of data. And again, I would just go back to the fact that today, the way we collect data is not clean, primarily because, the technology exists, but a lot of that is in silos. I really think that what Neurus is doing with that data collection and data synthesizing and creating that standardization, that's going to it's sort of the rising tide that raises all boats, right? The vendor community rises, the data collectors rise, and it's now going to create a little more standardization around the entire process. I think that is going to be massively valuable. Just that alone is going to bring so much clean data into the mix that all of a sudden your operational intelligence is going to look very different, let's say 10 years from now, because what you're doing today is working off of the last 5 or 10 years of data. And imagine what you're going to do 10 years from now is going to be based on what you do today onwards, right? And so I see huge value right there. And I think the simulations of tomorrow, the scenario modeling of tomorrow, is going to be very different than the scenario modeling of today. We definitely do see a lot of variations in patterns. I'll just talk about, like, just say weather as one example. Like, you do see a lot of weather variations, wildfire pattern variations across, states like California this year, for example. We've had so many wildfires out the gate that we're not used to seeing a lot of that until like late September, October. So when we're seeing all these different variations, it's like a simulator's dream, right? Because the simulator is waiting for all these variations to happen so they can run all these simulations. So to your point, I think 10 years from now, there's a lot of possibilities, and the good thing is we're going to work off of a cleaner data set in that scenario.
I think of how much CPR has evolved over like our careers because it was evidence-based practice, right? Like we started out doing it a certain way, and then every so many years it got modified a little bit, and that was because the data led them in a different direction. And we're just starting to dip our toe in that as far as firefighting tactics go. We know more than we ever did, but we still got a long way to go, and then to be able to test different options without actually having to do destructive testing, that's going to be amazing.
Yep.
Who knows what will be, how that will inform staffing and budgets and such a incredible world.
Yeah, the future is fascinating. What's coming, and I think that 5 to 10 years we're going to see a lot more changes than we did in the past decade. Like you said, the speed of technology, the speed that artificial intelligence is coming on the scene. We wouldn't have had this conversation 2 years ago, but it's now it's even actually at the first TSI. I think AI was a whisper, and now it's a big it's on the main stage. So it's growing that fast.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like, I think one of the other things I see would be operational change, right? So it's different things are possible. So like, I do things differently today with AI than I used to do without AI before. And so it's not just me using AI to do things. It's also me changing the way I do things based on AI, right? So there's going to be a little bit of a feedback loop into the operational workflow as some of these technologies continue to progress. I think in a long time, this is probably one of the first times that is going to push the envelope on operational change.
Yeah. One of the things I've been wanting to ask you, Si, anyway, and Scott, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I have noticed in doing this show over the last year, a lot of fire departments that are doing really cool things are using tools that they already have. Most fire departments already have. They just don't know they have it. Right. And a lot of them have been Microsoft tools. Right. Like, I've noticed things like collecting data in the field.
Yep.
Some what I didn't know, man, when I was before I retired, I didn't realize we probably had that until I saw somebody else using it, and then I'm like, wow, but I didn't know that was even in the package. What are some of the most overlooked technologies that firefighters probably have right now they don't even know?
Oh gosh, I would just say Teams right there, like in one. Like, I would say Teams is probably the number one thing that comes across in most of my conversations. Last year at TSI, when we were on stage, we were asking the audience, like, hey, what percentage of people here are Teams users? And I would say like 85% of the room put their hand up. But I bet you they're not scratching the surface with Teams, right? Teams has a whole bunch of things in there. A lot of people use Teams for messaging, but what you don't realize is Teams is a platform. You can actually build applications into Teams. You can build workflows into Teams. You can build automated processes into Teams. And there's a ton of tool sets behind Teams that you can start integrating into Teams. And now in the last few months, I'm starting to hear from like many departments where you even sometimes have firefighters, who have a little bit of a tech savvy firefighter starting to build like an automated workflow with Teams where, a process kicks in and something happens and the data gets shipped out somewhere else. So they're actually starting to do a little bit of sort of low code development, if you will, within the organization. And so I think Teams is definitely untapped. I think even SharePoint is untapped in many areas. A lot of people have SharePoint repositories, but there's a lot more to SharePoint than just storing information, right? And I think with tools like Copilot becoming available to more users, I know we've got a government launch coming up, our first wave in October, when Copilot becomes available to our government customers. And we're going to see a lot more of those tools starting to bubble up and connecting the tool set together. Because traditionally users would work in Teams or SharePoint or Exchange or these different tools. With Copilot now, it's going to start stringing all these tools together. And so that is going to start creating, more usage and more adoption in these technologies as well.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of areas that are untapped in the departments. For one, I got to give Mike Cox some credit. Ezra GIS. Every time he does a presentation, you just look at the audience and people have their mouth open, like, what is it? And they all have it. Yep. Yeah, everyone in that room has Ezra GIS and all the free solutions for the public service that they offer, and nobody realizes that they have that. From pre-incident planning, hydrant inspections, they were just showing us at FRI how you do travel distances from your fire stations, and you pick 4, 5, 6 minutes, and then plotting that on your maps. I think that's a hugely underutilized. The dashboards you can have as a fire chief from Esri through your CAD system. You can see your turnout times. All that's available to you, and I think it's so underutilized. CAD systems. I think our CAD systems do a lot more than we realize. I know in our department it does. I got on the website and started seeing all the stuff our CAD system does that we're not utilizing. But even just the RMS software, the EPCR software, I know of departments that have some of these, some of our vendors' product, and they're not using it all. And I'm like, man, that does so much more. So I think there's a lot of untapped potential inside every department. I just look at some software you're using and really go research what it actually can do.
Let's talk about Copilot for government. So, I just had a training class with Copilot a little while ago. I'm wondering would I be able to hey, I want to collect data for whatever app purpose. I could just ask that technology, right? Would it be able to maybe give me some direction?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, there's different variations. There's also build your own copilots. So the technology exists where you can start building your own little generative AI application with some of the API-driven tech that's available with Azure, our cloud. But then there's also these pre-built tool. It's called Microsoft 365 Copilot. That's the one I was talking about. That's sort of an add-on to your existing M365 environment. That's the one that's coming to government in October. So to your point, absolutely, you can use that in context with your existing Microsoft tool set, or you can, if you want to build a custom Copilot experience, you can have at it. That capability is available today.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, even from a department policies and procedures thing, you could potentially use that for that.
Yeah, in fact, I had that conversation not too long ago. I was trying to build a chat bot for my department, and I wanted to throw all the policies, procedures, just frequently asked questions for the internal fire department itself, and it's easy to do. I built one out very simply, and you put the information in there. If you have, for the email policies that everybody gets, you jump those emails in there, so you're not trying to dig through your emails 6 months later. It's in that chatbot, and like Sai said, in fact, I saw he posted on LinkedIn that Microsoft's unrolling an even better kind of chat bot next month. So I was looking forward to that coming out.
That's pretty remarkable. I'm just hope nobody fell off the treadmill just now. But I mean, that's just the potential of what you could just do with that. That could make life so much easier in a fire department, man. Just to be able to ask a question and get a fairly quick and reasonable answer. And you policy driven.
Yeah, and you can flip it around and make one for the citizens. For citizens that they can get on there and have those conversations with it as well. It's nothing more than if you get online right now and you get that little window that shows that Mary wants to have a conversation with you from whatever, you're talking to AI, and you're basically talking to one of those chatbots. You're not talking to a real human. It's just like that. So you can do that for your citizens, that they can get on and have conversations with it to find out more about your fire department, and you can engage with your citizens that way.
Yep.
Amazing times.
Yes.
Guys, we're just about out of time. Be sure to, if you haven't read that article yet, go read it. And, maybe save that down for later reference, because you've got a lot of great information in there, a lot of definitions, things of some common types of AI, different uses of AI. You did a good job of kind of laying a nice baseline and groundwork for where we're going in the future. Anything parting kind of words that you want to? So what do you have?
Well, I hope to see all of you at TSI. And so if you listen to this podcast and you came because of it, come up and let me know, or find Chief Buchanan or Cy. We'll all be there. Come by and say hi to us. I would love to see you there. I think that you'll be blown away with what you find out, with what you find there and what you learn.
Good stuff.
Agree. And I think I would just say, absolutely be at TSI, but more importantly, when you're in that station, or you've got a little bit of time, listen to a podcast, read an article, pick up a book, and there's a lot of content out there to learn about AI. And I would just say, even if it's a little bit, it's just there's level 0, level 100, and then there's level 600 out there. And so whatever your comfort level is, find an article or find a podcast that you can listen to that gets you a little bit more educated, because with awareness and education is going to come use eventually. Right. So.
Right. But there's so much talent and creativity in the fire service, and I always think one of the things that makes candidates stand out in promotional processes for me was folks that took the initiative to do something cool. They saw an opportunity, and they took the initiative, and they went out and did it, and it works. And there's so much opportunity with technology and artificial intelligence, and it's a wide open field. And all it takes is a little initiative, and man, you could do some cool things.
100%.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, I appreciate you coming on the show. I'm so happy we could do it. This has been a favorite one of mine, man. I've got 3 pages of notes I've written down over here of things that I'm gonna go tinker with. So I appreciate y'all taking the time and coming on the show.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it. It's always great anytime I can get on with Cy and talk with him. So I enjoy it. Thank you for having us.
Brilliant. That's a wrap for the Fire Service Data and Tech. Hey, Chief. Yeah, Cy, thank you so much, man. I'll see you guys probably in the next week or two somewhere. I'm sure we get together a lot. But that's a wrap for this month's Fire Service Data and Tech Talk podcast on fire engineering. You can find us on all the social media outlets for fire engineering. And we also, if you're looking to get in touch with me, you can go to Data. I have a Twitter handle. It's Data Tech Talk on Twitter. I'm Eddie Buchanan on LinkedIn. And you can also find the Fire Service Data and Tech Talk Facebook page. You can communicate with us in any of those channels. And if you got an idea for the show, we'd love to know. So we'll talk to you next month. Everybody be safe.
For all your medication and narcotic tracking needs, check out the LogRX app, created by career fire and EMS professionals. That's LogRX.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Flex 7 from TenCate Protective Fabrics. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of enforced technology. Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit TenCateFabrics.com/Flex 7.